Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm your host, Sami Higab, and I'd like to first start off by wishing a greeting of peace to all my family and friends and anyone else that's watching this live stream at the moment. Now, I would like to do a very simple live reaction on Miko Peled. He's actually an inspirational figure, an author of The General Son, coming from a Zionist family. And I would like to hear his perspective. He's a man that I highly respect and value within our human race. As I said, and I've always said in all my podcasts, we all originated from Adam, so we're all children of Adam, and therefore we all belong to the same human race, and we're all brothers and sisters. So I'd like to hear from Miko Peled. Now, this video was actually posted a couple of years ago by Epic Masjid. I've left all their credits down below, as well as the link to the original video if someone wants to watch the full video uninterrupted by myself. I'll do my best not to interrupt because I will tend to agree with a lot of what Miko Peled has to share. Now, you have to bear in mind this is 2 years old, but it's still relevant to the current issues and the current conflict that's going on, and it might shed some light to everyone else that might want to have more of insight, get more educated, become more knowledgeable on the historical background, the backstory to this whole conflict. And I strongly believe in what Miko Peled has to share. I haven't watched this video yet myself, so it will be as much as an insight for me as much as it would be for yourself as well. So let's hear Miko Peled's perspective. I'm going to start the video shortly. Just give me a few seconds just to adjust the screen, and I'll pause the mic as well so it doesn't interfere with the sound.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's an honor to be here. I want to thank Sheikh Qadi for inviting me. It's great to see Dr. Bazian. Here's wonderful lectures. I've had opportunities to speak after him in other events, and it's always a great education to listen to his lectures. And thank you all for being here today. This is unique to have an event in person. You know, the last year and a half, it's all been Zoom, sitting with pajama pants and a coat and a jacket and a shirt and doing a lecture. So this is very nice to see people again. Can you hear me okay? All right, I know there's a little bit of echo. So like you heard today, exactly 54 years ago today, the Israeli army received a green light from the government to go ahead and begin an assault against Egypt first. This green light from the Israeli government came after many weeks when the Israeli High Command, the Israeli military high command, was pushing and demanding to start a war. My father was a general. He was a member of the Israeli High Command at that time. In this book, in The General Son, I actually have the actual minutes from the meetings of these generals explaining why they wanted the war. It wasn't because there was a threat. It wasn't because Israel was being threatened or Jewish people were being threatened. They wanted the war because they saw an opportunity. And they began a massive assault against Egypt. And when that went very well, they decided they would take the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and the Golan Heights, which were areas they wanted to take anyway. They were planning to do anyway. This was a massive assault by Israel against its Arab neighbors because they wanted to destroy their military and because they wanted the land. And within 6 days, it was over. And then what they did was they perpetuated this myth, which we even hear today. People talk about that even today as though it's true, that Israel was under an existential threat, that the Arab armies were ready to come and kill and destroy, and on, and none of that was true. In their meetings, in the very meetings of the generals, of the Israeli high command, which, like I said, included my father, they were talking about an opportunity to attack because the Arab armies were not prepared for war. They say this. The Arab armies were not prepared for war. That's why we need to attack right now. In fact, my father himself says in one point, the Egyptian army, which was the biggest, would need at least a year and a half or 2 years before it would be ready for war. So this is an opportunity. And the word opportunity comes up many times in their discussions. The word threat never comes up, except that they said we need to perpetuate the story that there's a threat as a means to pressure public opinion and pressure the government to give the green light, and that's what happened.
Just a quick, realization. Maybe perhaps because of the current state in Gaza, and they are completely struggling, and also Egypt is struggling economically as well as its neighbors from all sides. Conflicts in Sudan, Libya, and so on. Perhaps Israel seen this, or the Netanyahu office realized that the situation is at like a brink of failure in all these different states. They're all going through different challenges, even at the point where the guards on the borders around Gaza, they will just use Gazans, the Palestinians in Gaza, as target practice, and they wouldn't even retaliate. So imagine that you go out to work in the morning and 50% of the population are actually unemployed because there's no work. They are in an open air prison effectively, but just imagine that you're going to work or your kids are going to school, and the Zionist soldiers guarding the borders, they start opening fire at your children. You lose a limb, and there's no one there to fight for your rights. You have no legal power. Israelis are effectively above the law, and Palestinians, they get persecuted, they get placed in prisons, lifetime in prison, without a charge, without a crime. So it's complete oppression and a complete apartheid state. However, if we take that all into account, that it was actually at the weakest point that this whole conflict started, and perhaps it might be what they term as a false flag operation. Maybe this was orchestrated just like 9/11, just like Pearl Harbor, just like 7/7. All these events have now been proven to be false flag operations. And not from me, from even whistleblowers within the Secret Service have come out and actually exposed the corruption that goes on within these agencies. And perhaps it was orchestrated with a high probability to serve the interest of Netanyahu. I mean, he was facing a lot of internal conflicts, a lot of challenges. He has corruption charges against him, and he wants to avoid all that. He wants to save his neck. So why not create a distraction where he can unite all the other Zionists, the Israeli citizens that he's sacrificing on his end, to unite for an all-out war, create the false narrative that it's revenge and they have every right to defend themselves, and all that nonsense that you hear on the mainstream media. I have the tendency to believe that perhaps it might be a false flag operation to serve that interest, and they will only attack once the counterparty or your opponent is on his knees effectively or is unaware. They always take that as an opportunity, and their agenda from day one has always been to exterminate all the other races and claim they are a superior race in some way. I don't know who gave them that title of a superior race, because certainly God is not racist. He created all of us equal. In fact, in the Quran it states very clearly that we've created you from a single pair of male and female and made you into nations and tribes so you can recognize each other. We should value diversity. We should respect that, appreciate it, welcome diversity, and learn about other people's cultures and look at them as equals, not as superior and inferior races. Not invade other people's territories, homes and so on, and claim that we are civilizing them like the British did in Africa, in India, in Egypt. They entered other people's territories claiming that they're actually liberating them and creating this false narrative that they're actually creating a civilization by rape, pillage, stealing, occupying other people's lands. It's the same narrative that the Nazis pushed as well, that they're a superior race and they want to create a superior race, they want to exterminate ethnic Jews and so on. It's a sad reality, and we need to move away from racism. In this day and age, there shouldn't be any racist among us. We should stamp out racism. We should be united to fight racism, not fight the native populace of a land, the Palestinians. Before there were Israels, or before the birth of Jacob, who is also known as Israel, Prophet Israel, and the children of Jacob are the children of Israel, effectively. So before that was the case, and before Jacob and his sons moved to Egypt, of course, firstly Yusuf alayhi salam, who went into Egypt and invited his family. That region they claimed that is called Israel was actually called Palestine, and it was occupied, or not occupied, but it was populated by the Palestinians. The native people of the land were Palestinians, just like native people in Australia were the Aborigines. It wasn't the British. The British invaded Australia. They massacred millions of Aborigine, the ethnic natives, just like the Americans. When they went there, there were native Indians, Red Indians, Apache Indians, all that. They were massacred. 500 million were massacred, create the land that we have today, the United States of America. It's built on oppression, ethnic cleansing, creating genocide, and so on. That's America, that's the UK for you. France did pretty much the same. Italy did the same thing as well. Libya, France in Morocco and Algeria. No one really talks about these things anymore. And the British, they massacred 500,000, 500,000 young men. Used them as human shields. The whole idea of human shields actually came from the British, because they were using Egyptians as human shields when they were fighting Hitler. They took the civilians in Egypt and used them as human shields when they were fighting. Exactly the same practice is practiced today in Palestine by the Israelis. IDF soldiers hiding behind Palestinian children, women, civilians, and shooting from their shoulders, just like that. Hiding, using Palestinians as human shields, not Hamas, not the resistant fighters. Doesn't matter what you call them. Islam does not condone killing innocent civilians. We're all human beings. You don't get to choose where you're born. You don't get to choose your parents. So you should give everyone an opportunity to learn about the truth, research the history, learn, not just adopt the false propaganda that you hear on the mainstream media, which is 99.9% false. Everything that you hear on the media, 99% is based on fabricated information. There's no reliable sources. Just always take the opposite narrative. If you hear something in the mainstream, it's probably the opposite. Very likely it's the opposite narrative. Anyway, I don't want to take the floor from Miko Peled because he's got some really good points. I would like to also hear from him. I'm always learning from him and from his experience, being from the other side as well and seeing the opposite perspective and comparing both narratives before deciding what the facts are. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with looking into other people's cultures, other people's history. I often watch videos from professors, Jewish professors, talking about the history of the Jews. And just speaking about what actually happened, the true narratives and historical evidence and archaeological evidence and so on. And from the Jewish scholars, they themselves say that they thrived and prospered under the Islamic State, under the Islamic government. They sought refuge with the Muslims. They sought refuge with the natives of the land in North Africa and Palestine. And we're the ones who actually protected them, the Muslims. We're protecting them against the Christians in Europe and the persecutions, even the Nazis when they were trying to persecute. There was the Muslims and Arabs and Middle Easterners and so on that went to their aid, sacrificed their life in protecting our Jewish brothers. Because we're all brothers in humanity. We should always remember that. And there's always a way, a peaceful resolution. Without violence, we can resolve this whole matter. Give everyone their rights, their birthrights. Dismantle the apartheid state. Compensate the people that you've persecuted for the past 100 years plus, more than 100 years, but if we round it up, it's 100 years. Because these persecutions and attack against the native people happened before the creation of the State of Israel. There was all these terrorists, groups, Zionist terrorist groups. The whole Zionist concept, the agenda was based around exterminating other races. First starting with the Arabs, starting with Palestinians, and then working their way around to other races as well. It's pure racism, pure fascism. Exactly the same with the Nazis. They were inspired. In fact, the founder, the visionary behind the Nazi ideology was inspired by Hitler, was inspired by the Nazis, and said, well, if the Nazis are doing that, and they're creating this segregated ethnic group and claiming they're a superior race, we will do the same. And this is not the way to fight racism. You don't combat white supremacists and white racists like the Ku Klux Klan, which still exists today, by the way, in America, by creating another racist group which is claiming that all blacks are superior than whites. This is all nonsense. You don't fight racism with racism. You fight racism by dismantling racism, by completely avoiding it, inclusive, giving people equal rights. We're all diverse, we all have our strengths and weaknesses, we all value each other, and together everyone achieves more. Our purpose in life is to benefit one another, serve others, service to many leads to greatness. That is our purpose. Help those who are less fortunate than us. So I hope you can understand these ideas, because I do believe in peace. We can have peace all over the world, not just in the Middle East. We can stamp out all crime, all forms of violence. There is absolutely no justification for violence or aggression or revenge. We can remove all these negative energies and focus on productive activity, being proactive and productive, and focus on positive things to create a better life for ourselves today and for the next generation to come. That should be our focus. How can we cooperate to do good? And when you see someone going in the wrong direction, like you see Israel, rebellious child, He just wants to kill and destroy, enjoys the concept of just massacring innocent civilians. They thrive on this kind of destructive activity. America, UK, France, or the rest of the world shouldn't support the bully, shouldn't support the Nazis, shouldn't be in support of the terrorists, because they are the terrorists. You should be siding with the victims. You should be standing side by side with the people that are being persecuted, the occupied, not the occupier. Don't side with the occupier. I hope you understand my words very clearly. I'll let you enjoy the rest of Miko Peled. I'm sorry for interjecting there and cutting off Miko Peled, but I had to say, just a couple of things, and I'll let you enjoy the show.
People were scared, the government was pressured, and they got the green light. And in 5 days it was over. They call it the 6-day war because there's a biblical connection that the world was created in 6 days. So in Jewish prayer, the 6 days comes up a lot, the 6 days of creation. And so they picked the 6-day war. But it's incredible that the lies that they perpetuated 54 years ago about an existential threat, even though those lies have been shown to be lies, not just by me, people before me and people after me and people, other Israeli generals stood up and said later on it was a lie, but it sticks. And this image of these poor Israelis being threatened is something that is continuing to this day. And it was a lie then, and it's a lie today. And what's interesting? We saw images over the last few weeks. And by the way, I just landed. I was in Palestine. I just landed 2 days ago. I was there for about 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks. And we saw images, and I'm sure you saw the images in Al-Aqsa during Ramadan. You heard about the expulsions or the attempted expulsions of Palestinians from neighborhoods around in Jerusalem, Sheikh Jarrah, Silwan, inside the old city, the Muslim quarter. This is an ongoing process. From time to time, something reaches the headlines. Something reaches the news, and so we talk about it. But this has been going on for a long time, and it's an ongoing process. Expulsion of Palestinians from their home, and expulsion of Palestinians from their land, and Israeli settlers taking over. That's not news. It's been going on for 75 years. But from time to time, there's a little eruption, so we hear about it. So this was Sheikh Jarrah, and then it went through the old city and Silwan, and then, of course, the Al-Aqsa compound and the mosque. And this is during Ramadan, as I'm sure you know. And you may have seen the images of young Israelis running through the streets calling death to Arabs. And then these big festive, occasions in the plaza just below Al-Aqsa, where the wall is, where Al-Buraq is. And they're dancing with the Israeli flag. And on top you can see the flames because as a result of the shooting by the Israeli forces, there was a fire. Not in the mosque, but next to the mosque. And as I was watching this too, I remembered after the 1967 war, and all the way till today, the most iconic sentence that everybody remembers, and to ask any, I don't know if American Jews, but certainly Israelis, the most iconic sentence that people remember is when the commander of the forces that took the old city and occupied Al-Aqsa, he said in his speaker, "The Temple Mount is in our hands." The Temple Mount is the name for the Al-Aqsa compound, the Haram al-Sharif. Now, there were these images of the soldiers reaching and crying and getting all excited about this. Now, these were not religious people. You know, these were secular Israelis. Most Israelis are secular. This idea of Al-Aqsa actually being the Temple Mount, actually belonging to the Jews, is not a religious idea. It's a nationalistic idea. It became kind of a nationalistic Zionist symbol. And immediately after the war also, the national poet of Israel wrote a song called Jerusalem of Gold. Maybe some of you heard of it. It became also iconic. Jerusalem of Gold became iconic. And in this song, in Hebrew of course, there are several lines which represent the narrative. And these lines talk about how the water wells dried up. The marketplace is empty. No one goes up to the Temple Mount, to the Haram al-Sharif. Nobody goes. It's empty. Nobody goes there to pray. The old city is like a ghost town. It's empty. The old city of Jerusalem. And nobody travels the road. There's a famous road that goes from Jerusalem down towards the Dead Sea, and nobody takes that road anymore. In other words, there's nobody there. There's nobody there. A land without a people. A city without a people that we redeemed, that we reclaimed, and is now ours. Now, she was as secular as you could possibly imagine, because Israeli culture is secular. They use Judaism, they use Jewish symbolism to kind of push forward this secular ideologies, this secular nationalist, almost neo-fascist ideology. But this song became iconic. The marketplace was empty. Jerusalem was empty. Nobody went to pray on the Temple Mount. There's a huge mosque there. The most iconic symbol of Jerusalem is what? The most iconic symbol when we imagine Jerusalem is the Golden Dome. These incredible structures that have been there for some 1,500 years, longer than anything else that's ever been there, with enormous significance, religious significance, historic significance, cultural significance. This city that was a Muslim and Arab city for 1,500 years, and they talk about it like there was nothing there. The Temple Mount is in our hands again. The city was empty. Nobody was in the marketplace. This perpetuates the Zionist ideology, the Zionist narrative that Palestine was empty and that for 2,000 years nothing happened in Palestine. The Jews were there 2,000 years ago, maybe 3. They were expelled, now we're back, and that's it. We pick up from where we left off. Nothing happened. This narrative that completely ignores a 1,500-year history, the people that existed there, that continue to exist there, the Palestinian people. This is the heart and soul of the Zionist narrative. So it's not that destroying Al-Aqsa and building some kind of a structure which they call a temple, it's not just a religious idea. In fact, it's not a religious idea at all. Orthodox Jews oppose this completely. It's a Zionist ideal. And what we saw, these images that we saw over the last few weeks, are very troubling because secular Zionists want to see this happen. I mean, I can't imagine, you know, the horror. I had Palestinian friends who were in the mosque in Al-Aqsa while the Israeli forces were attacking. the shooting, the tear gas, the bullets flying. How easy is it for a fire to start? And then suddenly they say, well, sorry, it was a fire, it was an accident. I mean, this is real. And the reason I'm saying this, like Dr. Bazian said, there's a sense that there's something, that there's change. But it's very, very slow. We need to stop being patient about Palestine. We need to stop being patient and waiting for somebody to do something. Each and every one of us has to be Salah ad-Din, like he said, and to act. Each one of us has to talk to somebody. Each one of us has to send a letter. Each one of us has to make a phone call. Each one of us has to write give out flyers. Each one of us has to do this. Because after it's destroyed, it'll be too late. And the process of destroying Palestine is moving forward full force. The Israelis don't rest. The Zionists don't rest. They never rest. They've got huge organizations in America. They've got huge, very effective organizations in Europe. They've got organizations working in Latin America and India, everywhere. They are pushing forward with their agenda. And it's crucially important that we all understand how important it is that each and every one of us, and I like this idea of each person seeing themselves as Salah ad-Din, each not waiting for somebody to come and save it. We have to do it. People always ask, will there be peace? Will Palestine be free? It depends on us. It's not going to come from somewhere else. It's going to come from us. Palestinians are doing everything they can in Palestine. And if you were paying attention, one, I think, of the remarkable things that we saw in this last uprising is Palestinians all over Palestine were responding. There's no more West Bank and Gaza. West Bank and Gaza are two Zionist concepts. Who created the West Bank? Before 1948, there was no such thing. What's the Gaza Strip? Where did that come from? These were constructed by the Zionists because those are particular areas that they wanted to create.
So yes, just like Miko Peled said, divide and conquer. They occupy a land and then they create eternal conflicts between two indigenous people who are fighting a power struggle between two individuals, get them to kill each other off, and then you enjoy all the resources of the land. You run away with all the gold. That's been their strategy since day one. And before that, before even Zionism came about, the British were doing the same. Americans have done the same. French, Italians, every single empire have actually followed that same idea of dividing and conquering. And they actually backed the two parties. They backed the two horses so they can continue, and they armed them. They supported Hamas into power, to political power. Even Netanyahu said they want to make Hamas even stronger, give them more control, more power, because it serves their purpose. They have an enemy to fight. If they don't, what would happen? They will have an unknown enemy to fight, because they'll have to fight with every single Palestinian. And that's why they label all Palestinians as terrorists. They give them different brands. So that's just basically it. Simple as that. They have no leg to stand on. This is the sad reality. They claim to be the victim, but they are the ones who are victimizing others. They're complaining about the Holocaust, yet they're causing the Holocaust in Palestine. They're the ones who are trying to exterminate and create a genocide and an ethnic cleanse. They complain about racism, but they're the first number one racist in the world. Public enemy number one. Yeah, let's just carry on, because it's good so far. I agree with everything Miko Peled Barakallah feek, may God bless you, for your efforts and speaking up. And it's very important. He did also say one important thing. For anything to change, we have to change. We as individuals have to change. I often speak to people about this conflict, and people always say, oh, leave the governments to deal with it. They have militaries, it's all political, you stay out of this conflict. They're absolutely wrong. They're trying to make an excuse for their cowardness. They can't stand up, they can't speak out. It's up to us, every single individual, every ethnic individual with morals should stand up and speak up. Because there comes a time when silence is betrayal. Most of us are betraying the whole entire human race, not just betraying the Palestinians. We're betraying ourselves. If you want to respect yourself, speak the truth. Irrespective what the narrative in the mainstream media, the false agenda, the racist ideology that's being spread, the targeting of others, we should all stick together as one, because we're all part of the human race. And every single one of us needs to be a warrior, needs to be a leader. You shouldn't be a sheep, a follower, you should be a leader. You should lead in your own life. And your focus should be serving the people that are less fortunate than you. Standing up for justice, protecting the weak, standing up against the bully, not siding with the bully. Don't be a sellout. Don't be like Jordan Peterson. He sold his soul to the devil. I have no respect for him, and I'm sure he doesn't even respect himself, because he knows he sold himself so cheap. And so many others out there, Ben Shapiro, another jerk that goes around speaking complete absolute nonsense, describing anyone that is not ethnically Jew as human animals. No justification to say that. No one holds him up to account for his nonsense that he says. And his solution, kill as many son of a bitches out there. That's his solution. He calls everyone sons of bitches. Anyone doesn't look the same as him, if you don't have blonde hair and blue eyes, they call you, they insult you, they insult your family, they call you rats. They call you sewers and uncivilized, barbarians, savages. That's what the British did when they went to Africa. Africans were living like kings. They were living like royalty. And they brought poverty on them. They stole their land. It's not just about Israel, Palestine. It's a global issue. It's the biggest pandemic. The pandemic is racism. We stamp out racism. We should respect everybody. If you can get to that, you would see the truth from falsehood. Because truth always outshines falsehood. It's not difficult. It's not a complex situation. It's very clear, crystal clear. But can you handle the truth? Because Joe Biden can't handle the truth. Rishi Sunak can't handle the truth. All the corrupt leaders around the world, they can't handle the truth. Can you? Are you up to hearing about the truth? So pay attention to Miko Peled. He's about to hit you with some facts.
These boundaries disappeared in terms of the protests. People are saying, well, Hamas were shooting rockets into Jerusalem. Why? As though Hamas is some entity, Jerusalem is another entity, Palestinians in other parts of the country are other entities, and they're not connected. It's like saying, why is somebody from Dallas joining the US Army? They should be joining the Dallas Army or something. They try to create this impression that there are no Palestinians. There's no Palestinian unity. There's no Palestinian entity. It's all Palestine. from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea, from the northern border with Lebanon to the Gulf of Aqaba. It's all Palestine. The majority of the people who live there are Palestinian Arabs. They're all controlled by what we know today officially is an apartheid regime called Israel. But it's Palestine, and the majority of the population are Palestinians, who of course have been designated different status. I won't get into that. But what we saw over the last few weeks is this unity. Palestinian flags were everywhere. Everywhere, in every city, in every town. West Bank, not West Bank, Gaza, no Gaza, the Naqab, Al-Jalil, all of parts of Palestine, Jerusalem, of course. And that's precisely what we need to encourage. That's precisely what we need to make sure we support. Now, you probably heard Israel had elections again, and after, I don't know, fourth time in a couple of years, and the news and the commentary, who won, who lost, is Netanyahu this, is Netanyahu that. Who cares? Who cares? There's a train that's about to hit the wall. Doesn't matter who's driving the train. They're all lunatics. They're all violent, racist lunatics. We should be worried about the people in the train. We should be worried about Palestine, about the Palestinian people who are suffering the consequences. We should be talking about how we free Palestine. We should be talking about how we get thousands of Palestinians out of Israeli jails. The main jail being the Gaza Strip with over 2 million people. I was in Jerusalem while Gaza was being bombed. To drive from Jerusalem to Gaza is maybe an hour. It takes maybe an hour. It's less than 100 miles. I could have been there in 45, 50 minutes by car. It's that close. Gaza was being bombed. I was getting messages from friends who live in Gaza. People with children who saw their friends being bombed, their neighbors being killed. And I'm less than an hour away, and everything's fine. People are going to work, people are sitting in coffee shops, there's electricity, everything is fine. The segregation that Israel established in Palestine is so effective that you could be less than 100 miles from this hell that was going on in Gaza and feel nothing. You could be less than that. You could be 10 miles away, as long as you're in an Israeli city, in an Israeli settlement, and everything's fine. You can see the smoke, and some people do, and they look at the smoke and they see the planes dropping the bombs, but they go on, sipping their coffee, kids go to school, everything's normal. They create this impression as though Israelis are under attack. Israelis are defending themselves. Defending themselves against what? 2 million people? More than half of them are refugees, homeless, bombed, with no access to water, no access to medical care. Defend themselves against what exactly? What is this nonsense? But they found out this formula that works. Because, for example, the Gaza Strip is a humanitarian catastrophe. 2 million people living in a concentration camp. You got to do something. Now, the obvious solution would be to open the gates, allow people to return to their homes. These people's homes are not in the Gaza Strip. Their homes, their land, their water, their rights are in other places, other parts of Palestine. They all came from somewhere. And by the way, if you ask the youngest kids in Gaza, they'll tell you exactly which village they came from. So that would be the obvious thing. Let them go home. Pay them reparations, compensate them, rebuild Gaza, rebuild these communities. These are people who are highly educated who want to go to work and want to be productive. We're not talking about millions of uneducated people. We're talking about a highly educated community. who can contribute, who wants to contribute, who want to build. But Israel doesn't want that. God forbid, they don't want the Palestinians back. Now, you can't just sit there and do nothing. So they came out with this demonic, satanic formula. Kill them and blame them for it. Kill them and say it's their fault because they're terrorists. And as absurd as this sounds, as crazy as this sounds, the rest of the world just nods their head and says, yes, yes, that makes sense. They're terrorists, so Israel has a right to kill them. There's never been a tank in Gaza. There's never been a military force. There's never been an army. Palestinians never had an army. Palestinians never had a tank, let alone an F-16. But Israel learned that this formula works. They slaughter innocent civilians and blame them for being terrorists. And then when they shoot rockets, they say, aha, see, they're terrorists. So Israel has a right to defend itself, but Palestinians don't. Israel has a right to bomb and slaughter innocent civilians, but Palestinians have no right to fight back. Because when they fight back, that's terrorism. This is an incredibly insane formula. And those of us that know that this is insane, we need to speak up. We really need to speak up. We need to tell people, this is insane. Are you listening to this? And this brings us to another issue, again, which Dr. Bazian brought up, this issue of, well, if you criticize Israel, then you're anti-Semitic. Nobody wants to be anti-Semitic. Nobody wants to be a racist. Zionism is a racist ideology. The State of Israel is founded on a racist ideology. Israel is an apartheid, racist, violent regime that has taken over Palestine. That is how we need to talk about it. Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, Zionism, white supremacy, these are all forms of racism. Opposing them is the right thing to do, all of them. Most Orthodox Jewish people oppose Zionism. They always have. Zionism has got nothing to do with Judaism. They stole this identity and they use it, like we heard just now from Dr. Bazian. They used it. It has nothing to do with being Jewish. It has nothing to do with liking or disliking Jews. Yes, Israel is a state where Jewish people live. But the regime is a racist apartheid regime. It is violent. It is oppressive. It's engaged in by the way, apartheid is a well-defined crime, as is genocide, as is ethnic cleansing. And the State of Israel is engaged in all three crimes. And people say, well, don't say genocide because the crime of genocide has a clause that says you have to show intent in order for it to be genocide. So you have to find some place where the Zionists actually wrote down that they intend to destroy the Palestinian people. Well, they didn't write it down. But you know what? We have a 75-year history. You know, you drop a bomb, you kill innocent civilians once, okay, that's an accident. You do it twice, maybe it's an accident. You do it for 75 years on a systemic, regular basis, it's genocide. And that's what we see there. That's why I think it's important to use these terms, because they are well-defined crimes. So opposing Zionism is the right thing to do, just like opposing any other form of racism. Opposing Zionism and opposing anti-Semitism and opposing Islamophobia is all the right thing to do. Because these are all racist ideas, and racism, of course, we should have no tolerance for racism. I think it's crucial. So where do we go from here? What do we do? I mean, that's always the question. And it's hard to speak up. There's no question that it's hard because the media and public opinion are all going in the other direction. But that's okay. That's okay. Palestinians have a right to live. Palestine has a right to be free as a country, as a culture, as a people. And it's not going to happen unless we act. People of conscience, people who understand, need to act. That's how things change. That's how we do things. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to get up in the morning and act and do the thing that we do best, whether it's on social media, whether it's with our friends, whether it's a book club, whether it's writing to your congressman. You know, it's absurd. American politicians think that they can say that they're Zionists and it's okay. There's a president, President Biden said he was a Zionist and he's proud of it. Is he out of his mind? I didn't learn about Zionism in a college course. I didn't learn about Zionism from a book. My grandfather signed the Israeli Declaration of Independence. I grew up in Zionism. I know what Zionism is. And I reject it completely. You have to reject Zionism if you have a conscience. To be proud of being a Zionist? What else is he proud of? Being a pedophile? I mean, what is next? It's that severe. We need to make sure that our elected officials know that there should be no tolerance for Zionism, just like there should be no tolerance for other forms of racism. But we need to make it clear to them that being Zionist is a crime, is supporting racism and violence. We need to make it clear to them. Unless they support the call to boycott, the call to impose sanctions, the call to isolate Israel, then they're not going to be elected. Not only to support it, they need to push for it. They need to demand sanctions against Israel. There needs to be a no-fly zone over Gaza. The Sixth Fleet in the Mediterranean should be there supporting the Palestinians, giving them relief, making sure that Israel can't bomb anymore. There should be no more weapons sent to Israel. What is this? Why are we supplying Israel with money and weapons? Can anybody explain that? Other than to help the weapons manufacturers? So we need to make sure our politicians know what we think about these things, and that we demand of them to take a strong stance, to take a clear stance, so that there is a change. And I am optimistic. I do believe that a free Palestine, that Israelis and Palestinians can live in peace, but not under a racist regime. Not in an apartheid regime where I have all the privileges and Dr. Bazian can't even visit Palestine, let alone go to Nablus and live there if he chooses to. I can go back tomorrow and live there if I choose to. That is unacceptable. The apartheid is unacceptable. The privilege is unacceptable. The privilege has to be given to everyone. There's plenty to go around. So that needs to be the goal. A free, democratic, one person, one vote, liberated Palestine, decolonized, with the right of the refugees to return actually materializing. All Palestinian refugees allowed to return, prisoners released. None of that's going to happen unless the Zionist regime falls. Israel will never allow any of that to happen. There's no one part of Palestine that can be fixed. It has to be a whole thing or nothing at all. Now, I'd be remiss if I was here in Dallas and didn't mention our friends from the Holy Land Foundation, five Palestinian Muslim Americans, 5 heroes, 5 incredible human beings, 4 of which are still in jail. So I wrote this book a couple of years ago about the Holy Land Foundation 5. If you don't know the story, the stories in here. If anybody has any doubt whatsoever that these men are innocent, they're not only innocent, they're saints. They're heroes. And as you may know, 2 of them were in for 15 years, which are just over. Abdurrahman Aude and Mohammed al-Mazain. And Abdurrahman, thank God, is released. Mufid Abdul Qadir has 5 more years. And Shukri Abu Bakr and Ghassan Elashi got 65 years. For what? For being Muslims, for being Palestinians, for being good people. That's it. If they were anything else, they would be free men. So we need to remember them, and I believe we should be doing everything we can to release them. And they are political prisoners, by the way, just like the political prisoners in Palestine. There's no difference. They will be released when they will be released. It's a political issue. They're political prisoners. And this is the reach of the Zionist organizations, that they can impact a trial here in the United States, here in Dallas, and put 5 good men in jail on terrorism charges, men that wouldn't hurt a fly, the finest, kindest men you'll ever meet. So it's impacting everyday life, everyday people here in America too. So again, being here in Dallas, I thought it would be important to remind ourselves and to take a moment to think about these 5 great men and how we help them and how we get their release. And you know, a word of optimism. I'm sure you've heard of South Africa, and that South Africa used to be an apartheid regime. And in 1994, Nelson Mandela became the president of South Africa. He was released from prison after 28 years, and he became the president of South Africa in 1994. If we sat here today and it was 1988 or 1989, and somebody stood up and said, in 1994, Nelson Mandela would be president of a free South Africa, everybody else would laugh. Everybody would laugh. In 1989, nobody would have believed that within 5 years, South Africa will be free from apartheid, and Nelson Mandela would not just be free, but president of South Africa. Nobody would have believed it. And I always remind myself of that story when I'm depressed. When things look terrible, when things look hopeless, I always remind myself of that. Things can move very quickly. They can move very quickly. And a free, democratic Palestine can, will, and must be a reality. I believe it depends on us. So please, remember Palestine, do everything you can for Palestine, think of Al-Aqsa, and remember how valuable and how important it is to protect Palestine, to protect Al-Aqsa, and to protect the people of Palestine. Thank you all very much.
And thank you, Miko Peled. You're a real gentleman, a real man of high moral standard for standing up to truth. I really enjoyed the speech by Miko Peled, and once again, Barakallah Feek, and for everyone else that were watching and benefit and agree with Miko Peled on his statement. Now, here's a gentleman that came from the side of Zionists, so it doesn't matter how you start your life. The most important thing is how you end your life. So if you find yourself on the wrong track, you turn around and go back and change lane, change direction, and seek the truth, because God guides those who seek guidance. He doesn't guide anyone unless they seek guidance. And it's up to us as each individual to stand up for truth. to make a difference in this world, to make this world a better place for everyone. I said it once and I've said it many times. We all originated from Adam. We're all children of Adam. And therefore we're all brothers and sisters in humanity. There's no justification for violence. There's no justification for war. But if they want war, they will find the resistance combating them. Even myself, I'll stand up for that. It would be a great honor to fight and defend my brothers in Palestine and my brothers and sisters and all the human race. There's no point in living as cowards. It's not about, you can live many years to die in your bed many years from now, like Braveheart said, William Wallace. It's very important. We all need to be William Wallace. We all need to be Salah ad-Din Ayyubi. We all need to be Khalid bin Walid. We all need to be Umar ibn Khattab. We all have to be Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. We can't be waiting for al-Mahdi. We can't be waiting for a great leader to lead us into battle or to tell us what we should do and what we can't do and stuff like that. We have to be leaders. We have to be high value men and women. We need to go out there and get educated, find out the truth, and then proclaim the truth and stand up for peace and justice. By words, by action, by any means necessary. Because we are on the right side. So we are the ones who have to carry that message forward. The message of peace. The enemy are barbaric, racist ideology. You've heard it from Miko Peled. And he came from a Zionist background. His father and grandfather, generals, the founders of Israel themselves, signature to the Declaration of Independence. Even he renounced this racist ideology, and there are many, many like him. Many born Israelis, Zionists, people that were breastfed on Zionism from birth, but they use their brain to find out the truth. They open their ears and mind and their heart. That's how God guided them to the truth. Don't side with the bullies, irrespective how your life could appear in the short term. Always stand up for justice and peace and human rights. Always stand up for the victims. Help those who are less fortunate than you. I'm going to ask you a question. We know very clear that UK, US and many European countries, they sponsor Israel and sponsor the violence, and they weaponize this barbaric racist ideology of your tax payment dollars, with your dollars, with your euros, your sterling pounds. Are you prepared to take time off work and not contribute towards this racist ideology? Or you're just going to say myself, me and myself and I have a family, I have children, I have this and that. Are you prepared to sacrifice and say we are not going to pay because we did not vote for our money, our donations, our contribution to the economy to be used in such a way to sponsor terrorists, state-sponsor terrorists? Are you prepared to stand up for justice and peace? Or are you just words? Go where you're treated best, that's what I say. If you're in the UK right now, look for another country. Start looking from now. Because the first objective is to exterminate Palestinians, then the Arabs, then it will be you and me. They have no respect for human life. They only see one thing, and that is a Zionist life. They claim they're a superior race, which is false. It's the very essence of racism. So we should renounce and dismantle this apartheid, pathetic state and create a new world. built on peace, justice. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this reaction video. Very short. I don't have anything negative to say about Miko Peled. Therefore, I'm not angry at Miko Peled. I'm actually happy, and it touched my heart. I like when I see respectful human beings with high moral standards speaking up the truth, speaking up their mind, saying the facts as it is. I often speak to many friends that criticize certain governments. If they're from Pakistan and they criticize the Pakistani government, and once I put them in front of a camera, they start praising the Pakistani government. I said to them, well, just a minute ago, we were just having a friendly chat and you was pointing out all the corruption and you mentioned names. And now I put you on camera and you're saying they're the best human beings on the planet, they're angels. They're hypocrites. But unfortunately, a lot of people are cowards within our community. We're in our own community, Muslims that go to the mosque. A lot of them are hypocrites. A lot of them are munafiqeen. They're not sincere. So it's not about Muslims and non-Muslims here. It's about your principle, your moral standing. They will side with anybody as long as they pay them money. In the mosque, they're a Muslim. Outside the mosque, they're non-Muslims. I know many like that. I know many hypocrites. But I don't embarrass them. I don't expose them. Because they like to portray a certain image that they're pious individuals, they're charitable, they're working to establish certain things. No, let them enjoy their life. Allah knows what's inside their heart. Because if they were sincere, they will speak up. They'll create a podcast like this or their own channel and say the truth. Speak up against corruption, oppression, injustice around the world. By corrupt leaders because we ourselves are corrupt. When we change our way of life and our way of thinking, and we speak up, stand up, and no matter what the risks are, don't be afraid. As long as you are speaking the truth, Allah's on your side, God's on your side, and Allah is the real superpower. He controls everything. He's above it all. He can see what's going on. When the decision of Allah comes, it became over for all these corrupt people. But you and I need to change. You and I need to step up to the plate. We need to step forward. We need to be at the forefront. Not for some political position, not for any position of authority. No, each of us has to speak up the truth. You go to a tyrant and you look at him in the face and speak to him the truth. Just like Musa alayhi salam. What did Moses do? He went to Pharaoh, the head of the state, the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, and told him, submit yourself to the Creator before it's too late. He warned him about his corruption and facade that he's doing on the earth. In his face. He wasn't afraid of Pharaoh or anybody. He was afraid of Allah, who created me, you, and everyone. He warned Pharaoh of the consequences of his disbelief and his consequences of claiming that he is divine. At the end, Pharaoh drowned. And as a sign, Allah told us in the Quran, He preserved his body. So people can learn from this. This is what happens to the dictators and tyrants in the land. This is the end of their legacy. There's no legacy. They're all forgotten after this. He couldn't even protect him, so he couldn't even prevent his own death. All this mighty army, he couldn't prevent it. Just like Netanyahu, unless he repents, turns his life around, he's facing a massive destruction, a massive humiliation. And all the people that are supporting him now, Biden, Sunak, all these racists, and they're proud to be racists, saying that they're all Zionists, just like outly, exposing their intentions that they are racists. And people don't question these statements, and people still vote them in. Keir Starmer for the Labour Party. The only party in the entire United Kingdom that has any morals and integrity is the Scottish National Party. Because the head of the Scottish government right now, he's got family that's stuck in Gaza. So it's something that comes home to him. His wife is half Palestinian, half Scottish. So he can't discriminate. He can't ally himself with the political point of view, his racist ideology by Rishi Sunak. So I invite you to know the truth for yourself. If you don't know any Muslims, go find a Quran, contact me. My contact details are usually in my video description. Contact me, I'll send you a free Quran. We can meet up, we can talk. Even if you have a different opposing opinion, even if you are racist, far right, Nazi, Zionist, I'll still meet with you and I'll listen to your point of view. I would see the evidence. How is it that the whites are superior than the blacks? And explain to me, how is that logically sound? How is it that you are a superior race and everyone else is an inferior race? How do you justify it to yourself mentally? How do you sleep at night with this nonsense that you're propagating? And I listen to everybody. We can talk, we can discuss, we can share facts, and then we can agree to disagree respectfully, without any violence. You know, I can't change you, you can't change me. There's no compulsion in a way of life. If you believe your way of life is truth, oh, fine, live your way of life. If you want to stay as a racist, stay as a racist, but don't impose your racist ideas on others. Don't impose your nonsense and trash and garbage on others and force people to believe or follow this woke ideology that you're promoting. This nonsense. This is why I've lost respect for Piers Morgan. He's a hypocrite. He never speaks the truth. He never balances his opinion. He doesn't stay as neutral. He's always taking one side. He's always siding with the racists. He even called the IRA. He's Irish. There's a shame on you, Piers Morgan. He's Irish and he's against the IRA. IRA stands for Irish Republic Army. It's a resistance army, and you call them terrorists. Yes, they did some activity, they did some certain things, civilians got harmed and so on, which is wrong. But their intention wasn't to kill civilians. Their intention was to resist the occupation, the British occupation. The way they went about it, I disagree with it as well. But their intention was to liberate the land, just like any other militant groups as well. Their intention is to liberate the land, not to kill civilians. Some of them have rules of combat and they can't kill civilians and so on. They abide by it. Not everyone's the same. Your fingers are not all the same. None of us are all the same. We're all different. We all have different fingerprints as well. So you can't judge and you can't just paint everyone with the same brush, basically. Just say, all blacks are criminals, all whites are angels, and all this. You can't do that. You can't stereotype. You have to treat everyone as an individual. I hope you understood what I'm trying to convey to you. And if you disagree with any of my opinions, you've got different evidence, share it with me. Please bring it forward. Bring your evidence forward. I'll be very interested and eager to learn the reality. And I value constructive criticism, so if I did say something wrong, I'll appreciate even more if you point me in the right direction. And I have people always contact me through different social media networks and give me some information. But it's always to back up my claims or whatever I'm advocating, most of the time. Very rarely does someone say, brother, but this point wasn't correct. Maybe you're not aware of this. Here's a little bit of information. Most of the time, 99% of the time, it's people that are backing what I've stated and they've said I'm 100% correct. The information I have, here's more evidence to prove your claim. Here's a little bit of a fact of leaders in Zionists and what they've said regarding blacks regarding other race groups. This is the kind of discrimination that really does exist. Even discrimination within the Jewish community. You know, white Jews are superior than black Jews and all that, so they discriminate, they create this caste system. This is why it actually sits well with Rishi Sunak, because he believes in this caste concept, be discriminated against other human beings based on your genetics, based on your ancestry, lineage, and so on. It's very sad. May Allah guide Rishi Sunak. May Allah guide even Netanyahu. He's knitting, but he's still a human being. Knitting human. Arabs will understand what I mean when I say call him a knitting. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and I wish you all peace. Take care.